There's something about the open road, a sense of freedom. But for some, that freedom can turn into a one-way ticket to absolute terror. What you're about to hear are 4 stories from people who claim their road trips turned into genuine nightmares. These aren't just spooky campfire tales. They're alleged to be real experiences that will make you think twice before your next long drive. They're a chilling reminder that the scariest things aren't just in the movies. Sometimes they're waiting for you just over the next hill, right at the edge of your headlights. This first story comes from a college student we'll call Mark. He was making that long, lonely drive home for winter break, which meant cutting through a notoriously empty stretch of desert in the American Southwest. It's the kind of place where the radio gives up and turns to static, and your only company is the hum of your own engine. Mark was a few hours into this empty void, long after the sun had set. The world outside was just black and gray, painted by the moonlight. And that's when he first saw them, a pair of headlights in his rearview mirror. At first, he was almost glad to see them, a silent companion in the dark. But that feeling didn't last. It soured into a cold, creeping dread. The truck, an old semi, just kind of settled in behind him and stayed there. Mark was already doing the speed limit, but this truck was practically kissing his bumper. He sped up, pushing at 5, then 10 miles over. The truck matched him perfectly. Its lights burned into his mirror like a pair of eyes that refused to blink. This wasn't just some impatient driver. He decided to test it. He slowed way down, dropping well below the speed limit. And just like he feared, the truck slowed down with him, keeping the exact same suffocating distance. The fear of being hunted kicked in. He was completely alone out here, miles from anywhere. No other cars, no witnesses. He saw an exit ramp coming up, leading to a dark county road that vanished into nothing. On a desperate impulse, he yanked the wheel at the last second and swerved onto the exit. No signal, no warning. The truck behind him did the exact same thing, its tires screaming as it followed his every move. The panic was real now. This wasn't a coincidence. He was being hunted. The county road was even darker, squeezed in by skeletal-looking trees. Suddenly, the truck's high beams flared on, flooding his car with a blinding light that wiped out the world. He couldn't see the road. He couldn't see anything but that glare in his mirrors. He floored it, his little engine screaming, as he pushed the car to its absolute limit. The truck roared behind him, its engine a deep, terrifying growl that seemed to vibrate right through him. He remembered what his dad once told him. If you think you're being followed, don't go home. Drive to a police station. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely unlock his phone. He managed to pull up his GPS. The nearest town was still 20 agonizing miles away. He drove like a madman, taking turns way too fast, his tires squealing in protest. He forced himself to look at the tiny sliver of road he could see past the blinding lights, not daring to check the mirror again. He just drove, praying he'd see the lights of a town. When a faint glow finally appeared on the horizon, the relief was so intense it almost made him dizzy. As he raced into the town limits, past the first few streetlights, he risked one last look in the rearview mirror. The truck was gone. The road behind him was just empty and dark. No dust cloud, no fading taillights. It was as if it had never been there at all. He never saw it again, but he says he'll never forget the memory of those unblinking headlights, a permanent reminder of the predators who hunt on lonely roads. This next story touches on a very real danger. Criminals who pose as cops to trap unsuspecting travelers. But this particular account has a twist that's hard to explain. It comes from a long-haul trucker whose dash cam was running. But what he says happened is something else entirely. He was driving through a heavily wooded area in the Pacific Northwest, late on a foggy, rainy night. Visibility was terrible. As he came around a bend near an old mile marker, his dash cam supposedly picked up something on the side of the road. He described it as a faint, almost translucent figure, the shape of a child, barely there in the swirling fog. He said it seemed to shimmer in his headlights for just a moment, and then it was gone. He wrote it off as a trick of the light, his mind playing games on a long, boring drive. A few miles down the road, his CB radio crackled to life with a garbled voice. It was mostly static, but he could just make out a few panicked words from another trucker. Fake cops, spike strip ahead, don't stop, and then just static. The trucker's blood ran cold. Fake police ambushes were a known tactic in remote areas like this. Crooks use flashing lights to pull someone over or lay down spike strips to disable their vehicle. His mind flashed back to that shimmering figure he'd seen. Could it have been some kind of warning? He slowed down, his eyes glued to the road ahead. And sure enough, around the very next corner, he saw it, a makeshift roadblock. An unmarked car with a cheap, flashing blue light on the dash was parked across the road. Two men stood beside it, waving for him to stop. And lying across the pavement was a crude spike strip, his heart hammered in his chest. Those were not cops. Their uniforms were a mess, and they just looked wrong. Remembering the warning from the radio, he didn't even think about stopping. He laid on his horn, a deafening blast that echoed through the forest, and aimed his massive rig for the shoulder. He plowed right through the muddy ditch, going around the roadblock entirely. In his side mirror, he caught a glimpse of the men's faces, their shock turning to pure rage as they watched their trap fail. He got back on his radio and immediately started broadcasting a clear warning to any other drivers in the area, telling them exactly where the fake cops and their spike strip were. He never forgot that night, but the part that truly haunts him isn't just the close call. It's the memory of that small, translucent figure in the fog. He says that when he went to check his dash cam footage later, the file from that exact time was, for no reason, corrupted and unviewable. He has no proof. So now he's left to wonder, was it a ghost, a guardian angel, or just his own mind giving him a premonition that saved his life? Our third story is from a woman named Chloe, a solo traveler who loved the character of cheap roadside motels. After this night, she'd find that character was just another word for pure, unadulterated fear. She'd been on the road for 12 hours and was completely exhausted. She pulled off the highway in rural Oregon and found a little single-story motel with a flickering neon sign. The place looked almost abandoned. There were only a few other cars in the lot, one of them a beat-up pickup truck parked near the office. The guy at the front desk was unsettling. He had these dark, sunken eyes and a smile that was just wrong. He gave her the key to her room at the absolute farthest end of the building, away from everyone else. As she was grabbing her bags, she noticed a man standing by that same pickup truck, just watching her. He was gaunt and disheveled, with a completely vacant stare. Their eyes met for a second, and he gave her this slow, deliberate nod. Chloe quickly looked away, a shiver running right down her spine. She tried to brush it off. Just tired, just paranoid, right? The room was grim and smelled like dust, but the door had a lock. She shot the deadbolt, wedged a chair under the doorknob for good measure, and tried to get some sleep, but it wouldn't come. Every creak of the old motel, every truck that rumbled by on the highway, sent a jolt of anxiety through her. Then around 1 a.m., it happened. A soft, hesitant knock on her door. Chloe froze. Her blood ran cold. Her room was at the very end. Nobody should have been walking past. She held her breath, listening. Nothing. Maybe she'd imagined it. Then it came again, but louder this time, more insistent. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice shaking. A man's voice, rough and slurred, came from the other side. "Hey, you alone out here?" The words were casual, but his tone was chilling. It was him, the man from the parking lot. "Go away," she yelled, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I'll call the police." There was a long, silent pause. She crept over to the window and peeked through a tiny crack in the curtains. His truck was still there, but he'd moved it. It was now parked directly in front of her room, its engine quietly idling. He wasn't at her door anymore. He was sitting in the driver's seat, staring right at her window, just waiting. He knew she was looking at him. She fumbled for her phone and whispered to the 911 dispatcher what was happening. They told her officers were on the way. The next 10 minutes felt like an eternity. She just sat on the floor with her back against the wall, watching the window, watching him watch her back. He didn't move an inch. He just sat there, the engine humming, a dark shape against the glow of his dashboard. The sound of distant sirens finally broke the terrifying stalemate. But as the police cars pulled into the lot, the man in the truck didn't panic or speed away. He just calmly put the truck in drive and pulled out, disappearing into the night before the cops could get to him. When the police questioned the desk manager, he claimed he'd never seen the man or his truck before. Chloe checked out of that motel at 2 in the morning and just drove until the sun came up. She never stayed in a roadside motel again. Some roads just have a reputation. For decades, one of the most infamous was U.S. Route 666, a nearly 200-mile stretch of highway running through New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. Its name alone earned it the nickname the Devil's Highway, and it became a hotbed for stories about curses, skinwalkers, and phantom vehicles. They eventually renamed it U.S. Route 491 back in 2003, partly because of all the superstition, but the legends never really went away. This story comes from a man of the desert night. The road behind them was straight for miles. There was nowhere a truck that size could have turned off or hidden. It had just vanished. A lot of the old stories from the Devil's Highway talk about a phantom truck, sometimes on fire, that runs people off the road before disappearing. Whether it was just exhaustion playing tricks on his mind or something else, the driver doesn't know. But he knows what he saw. And he knows that for one terrifying second, he was staring death right in the face. The open road will always call to us, promising adventure. But as these stories show, there are shadows that linger on those long, lonely highways. So what's the takeaway here? It's simple, really. Trust your gut. Lock your doors. And always be aware that sometimes the real danger isn't at your destination, but on the journey itself. Stay safe out there. If you have a story of your own that you'd like to share, you can submit it to the email in the description below. For more tales of true horror, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Every story you hear is a reminder to stay vigilant.